I believe you have a report out which analyses how money is being put into climate change and whether it's working or not.
Absolutely true. So we have just published our most recent Global Landscape of Climate Finance, the Global Landscape of Climate Finance 2013, which shows where the world is standing in relation to its low-carbon, climate resilient goals, in the sense of just showing how are we doing with the finance. Is the finance actually supporting the pathway towards a low-carbon, climate resilient future? And what we show in our report is that in this year, we have global finance flows of 359 billion US dollars. This is an annual number. This is global number, so it's not a number from the north to the south. It's a global number, but it also shows us that it's fallen a little bit from last year. So compared to last year, we do have a decrease, and actually our number does obscure the total decrease because we have expanded in our figure our coverage of actors, with more projects, with a better coverage of several actors in the flows. What we see is that in overall, the private sector provides the lion's share of climate finance. We have about 62%, 224 billion US dollars is coming from the private sector, but very often enabled by public activities. So we do want to emphasize that the public sector, so public activities, public actors, public ways of sharing resources is actually essential and at the heart of the climate finance landscape.
It seems like quite a lot of money, $239 billion. How effective is it in actually helping people to move to a low-carbon economy and adapt to the possible effects of climate change?
Well, that obviously is the core question. And I just want to make the point that while it does seem a lot of money, we also need to understand what are the needs in order to get us on a low-carbon, climate-resilient pathway. And if you just look at the figures by the International Energy Agency, you can see that between now and 2020, you would need an incremental $1 trillion US dollars in the energy sector alone. So that shows you that we're actually facing a big gap.
So you're saying it's not that much money. Given even the small amount of money that it is, has it had a good effect?
Well, we certainly can see, not directly in the Climate Finance Landscape report, but in our other work that we're doing on specific case studies, that public money can be used in order to take off the risks, for example, or the costs that the private sector is not willing to take, and in this way is mobilizing investments that then has an effect. We cannot say on a global level whether this money has been spent wisely. In order to really understand that, you do need to go in project by project, or like in a more in-depth analysis, a bottom-up analysis of what's working. We have started to do some work. We can see from our work that whenever you have a good policy enabling environments, that there is a good effectiveness of the money that is being spent. And you can also see that whenever like the public money is being spent in order to take off specific risks the private sector doesn't want to take, that this is really triggering a lot of implications on the ground.
Can you give us some examples of what the money's been spent on? Is it mostly going towards renewable energy?
Right, so what we can see from our overall figure, that mostly is actually going towards mitigation, and again, mostly of that is going towards renewable energy. However, that said, this is also an implication of the data availability that we have. So we still face big data gaps in the context of, for example, adaptation finance, or in the context of energy efficiency finance. We can see we have 337 billion US dollars, which is currently being spent on mitigation out of the 359. We can capture about 22 billion of adaptation only, so it's a small share. But again, this is because the data is still quite bad in the context of adaptation finance. And we've been able to capture 32 billion US dollars of energy efficiency. But again, we do think that these are lower bounds, and we need to understand better and fill also the data gaps that are out there in order to really understand. But yes, just to come back to your question, most of the money at the moment is actually being spent on renewable energy.
At these talks, they're fighting over how they can manage to get up to 100 billion per year from 2020. Your report makes it sound like quite a small amount, given that there's already 239 billion flowing. I mean, is this finance track even worth it? Shouldn't they just be getting on with improving what they already have?
Well, again, I do want to make the point that we have to put our number, which is a global number, it should not be confused with the 100 billion. You need to put that in comparison to what is really needed in order to get us towards the 2 degrees goal that we're all talking about here. And in that context, we can see that we still need much more action and much more activity, both from the public sector and the private sector, in order to get us there.